Hey, what's up, folks? Welcome back to On Texas Football and welcome back to Sunday School. I'm lifetime Longhorn Rod Babers. This edition of Sunday School is brought to you by our good friends at Vonlane, vonlane.com, the only way to travel between the major Texas cities. We'll tell you a little bit more about Vonlane and what they're offering you a little bit later on in this program. But in this edition, on this edition, I should say, of Sunday School, I want to get into a statement that I heard Arch Manning say. It was a question he answered about what different quarterbacks he watches, other than his family, of course, other than Peyton and Eli. All right, what quarterbacks that he watches that he tries to take a little bit of their tools and that inspires him. He likes their creativity, their style. What quarterbacks that he looks at right now at the NFL level that he believes that they got some things that will translate to his game, right? And the two quarterbacks that he mentioned were specifically Joe Burrow and Josh Allen. I thought to myself, that is pretty interesting. As a player, I remember, watching the best cornerbacks in the NFL, right? Whether it be Dion or Dale Carter or Eric Allen, Aeneas Williams, Chris Dishman. You know, Champ Bailey, Charles Woodson. You name it. I watched all of them. Anytime, the Cowboys are my Oilers because I was a Lovey View fan. But anytime my team or a team that I watched mostly, because you had to watch a lot of Cowboys, you live in Texas. Anytime they played, some other team, I was watching all the best corners on the field, not only for my team, but also for their team. And I literally would take mental notes. I'd take actual literal notes. As you guys know, I like my papers. I would take literal notes and look at their technique and look at the different approaches and their different styles of play and how it could potentially translate to my game, things that I could emulate, things that I could mimic in my game, and I would experiment sometimes with a lot of things that they did. Didn't always work out for me. Wasn't I can't do the same things Dion would do, but I definitely tried the Deion Sanders stance. For those who don't know, go look at the Deion Sanders signature stance. He would have one of his legs. Usually it was the inside leg. He would have it back, like he would not have a balanced stance. He would almost be in a stance ready to almost kind of jump the receiver. He would have one foot up and he would have one foot back. It was a crazy kind of weird stance. And he would as soon as the ball was snapped, he would just kind of throw that back foot up, and it literally confused a lot of the receivers. They didn't know if he was coming to try to rush him at the line of scrimmage, or because he could do that really well because he was kind of in like a cocked stance, if you will. He could do that, or he could just decide to balance out. He had great makeup speed, so at times I think Dion was toying with him. So trust me, I tried that. It worked for me in high school, but it wouldn't work in college, right? And no DB coach would allow you to have the Deion Sanders stance, even though it was something that I also studied and experimented with. In high school, I had coaches that would let me do it. I did have Coach Jackson, who played in the NFL for a while, say there's no way you're gonna get away with that at any other level than right now. But he let me do it because he knew that I was trying to emulate Dion at the time. But anyway, getting to it, so I started thinking about, all right, let's look at Joe Burrow's game and Josh Allen's game, and let's assume that Arch is approaching it just like me. Either he's looking at the skill set of the player and tools that he could use and tools that he could emulate, or he is looking at the style of play and things that he could learn from their style of play that also may translate to his game. Or maybe it's the system that he really likes. I remember looking at it as a player once I got deeper into the game, watching certain systems that I really liked. And I, as a youngster getting into, oh, this is a very, cutting edge defensive system, whether it be because of the play call or whether it be because of some of the things they're doing on defense, and then trying to, learn the game from that standpoint, even as a player. Right. So it's, I'm sure right now Arch Manning is way ahead of where I was, right, as a prospect coming out. But I assume all players are doing this because a lot of them are asked that question, right? And you'll be surprised sometimes at the players that they're looking at. So I looked at Joe Burrow's game. Let's start with Joe Burrow. Then we'll make our way to Josh Allen. So Joe Burrow, the thing that stands out about Joe Burrow, if you're looking at the elite traits, the things that he brings to the table, um, you've heard me talk about butt naked drop backs, like drop backs on third and long, right? Drop backs where if you strip it of all the amplifiers and all the hacks and cheat codes, right? No RPOs, using no play action, no screens. If it's third and long, man, you just need your quarterback to go out there and make a play. And everybody in the stadium knows they're throwing the football. Joe Burrow is one of the best in the NFL at that. On third downs, he's number one in accuracy, completion percentage, number 3 in success rate. He is number 4 in the conversion rate since 2021 on third downs. And if you go look at, overall, they don't use a lot of amplifiers either. I mean, the Bengals, since Joe Burrow got into the league, 31st in play action pass rate. But second in pass rate over expected. So they throw a lot more than they're expected to, kind of based on the analytics. They don't use a lot of play action. But Joe Burrow's just dropping back as a straight drop back situation, especially on third downs. He is really, really good. I've talked about this about Arch. I studied it, and we talked about it on a previous Sunday school. He's really good in third and long situations in the small sample size we have. In those two games, the 2 starts he had on third and longs, third and 7+ yards a game, conversion rate of over 54%, which is crazy. Like if that translates, that would easily be, has to be one of the top numbers, if not the best number in the country in those situations. If you go look at his completion percentage, he was over 80%, over 18 yards per attempt. Explosive play rate over 30% in those situations. He's really good on third downs. Maybe that's something that he's taken watching Joe Burrow out there. He's Joe Cool in those situations. Now, obviously, it doesn't compare because Sark has a lot of hacks, cheat codes, amplifiers that he uses with the offense. So the only way to really compare the straight drop back situations between the two will be to look at third and long. I mean, Sark usually RPO play action pass rate last year for Arch was around 46%, according to Pro Football Focus. The screen rate is about 19%. Let's assume half of those it also involves some play action pass or RPO element. You're still above 50%, 55%, somewhere in there, conservatively, in terms of the RPO, play action pass, and screen rate in Sark's offense. But like I said, I do like the third down element. So maybe he's taking some of that from Joe Burrow's game. Something else that Joe Burrow does as well, if not better than everybody else, that I'm sure Arch Manning pays attention to, he's got a really quick kind of processing unit, if you will. He gets rid of the football very quickly. Like he knows exactly where he wants to go with the football pre-snap and confirms it post-snap about as efficiently as any quarterback in the league. If you go look at his time to throw, and this is what remember against Texas in 2019, his average time to throw was in that game? It was 2.4 seconds. It was his average time to throw. I remember going back and looking at 2.4 seconds. He had a 78% completion percentage when he got rid of the football in under 2.6 seconds. And when he was under 2 seconds, it was a 77% completion percentage. Gets rid of the football really fast. And that's the same thing in the NFL. He's top 5 last year in average time to throw, 2.5 seconds. He was number 4. And that's actually since 2021. The NFL average is about 2.7 seconds. This is actually something that Sark brought up on the Always College Football podcast with Greg McElroy when he was asked about what Arch is working on. And he started out saying, how great the deep ball is and the vertical passing game is with Arch. But just saying they're working on right now understanding the nuances of the offense. And he said, there are certain concepts in their offense designed to keep the completion percentage really high for a quarterback. I've heard him talk about these opportunity throws. He said they're opportunities for an easy completion, opportunity throws, easy completions to keep. He literally said, I want the completion percentage to be really high on those concepts so that when they do take the vertical shots downfield, ultimately that's going to be a less efficient passing concept or passing play than a quick play or quick hitting, quick game concept that's under 2.5 seconds. I'll give you an example. I looked up Arch's completion percentage when he gets rid of the football in under 2.5 seconds. Small sample size, of course. 77% completion percentage. Over 2.5 seconds, 57% completion percentage. But it ain't all bad. You got to have both of those, right? That's the only way you can force a defense to defend every blade of grass on the football field. So when you have that quick game, getting rid of the football fast under 2.5 seconds for Joe Burrow, it's an added insulation of pass protection, essentially. I get rid of the football so damn fast. If you blitz me, that's just a dumb idea. You're kind of wasting a blitzer. And that's why Joe Burrow is the lowest blitzed quarterback in the NFL. He gets rid of the football so damn fast. Like, I'm not wasting a man who's going to get caught in no man's land trying to blitz this dude when he's getting rid of the football so damn fast. All right. That's it. You gotta think, you gotta work smarter, not harder there. And I think for Arch, whose average time to throw is 2.74 seconds, NFL average is 2.7 seconds. He is right there. But I think ultimately, just situationally, you got to be able to get rid of the football at times, especially in Sark's offense, on time, right, and on schedule. And a lot of those are quick throws, the RPO throws in the quick game. And Sark is, big about that. And he brought that up separately. So you have the throws, you get rid of the football under 2.5 seconds. Those are low risk, kind of low reward throws. It improves the efficiency of the offense, but it minimizes risk. But you don't have as many explosive plays. When you get rid of the football over 2.5 seconds, you're a higher risk, but a higher reward, right? When he got rid of the football in over 2.5 seconds, all of his sacks, right? All 7 sacks for Arch came on those plays. But if you look at his yards per attempt, he's at 12 yards per attempt. He got 5 touchdowns, got 2 interceptions, 57% completion percentage. 19 is the average average depth of target. 4 big time throws. It's a higher risk but a higher reward situation. And Sark wants the healthy mix of both of them in there. So I'm sure that's something that he took from Joe Burrow. Now, Joe Burrow is interesting because, he was the most sacked quarterback to ever play in the Super Bowl. That year they played in the Super Bowl. Like, no quarterback that ever went to a Super Bowl had been sacked as many times as Joe Burrow. And I think he was sacked like 7 times in that game. And he even though he gets rid of football really quickly, he has been hit more than any other quarterback in under 2.5 seconds. It's a lot of offensive line issues. Arch ain't got to worry about that. I don't think Arch will have Arch won't have as many protection issues, I should say, as Joe Burrow's got, but that's at the NFL level. Also, something that Joe Burrow does really well that I think translates to Arch's game, the deep ball. We've talked about this. Joe Burrow has amazing anticipation. He's got amazing receivers too. I mean, Jamar Chase and T. Higgins, it helps. And then having Jamar Chase in college and also having, Justin Jefferson. And he says he watches them, in college too. So he's just starting to watch some of their college films. And we'll get to that. And these are the things that kind of translate, period, with his skill sets. But the deep ball. And, whether you're talking about, the way that Arch throws the deep ball, the arc on it, the anticipation with the deep ball, he's just a more talented, and honestly, his infatuation with it. He's just more talented at converting those vertical shots downfield than Quinn was. So you're definitely going to have it as a big part of the offense. I went and looked at his deep ball rate. We talked about it, over 21%, 21.1%. If you look at it, and I just include quarterbacks who had at least 100 dropbacks. So I think Arch was at 101 dropbacks, something like that, 101. So if I just said, all right, you got to have at least 100 dropbacks to be included in this deep ball rate conversation, he would be 4th. Last year, he would have been, 3rd in the Power 4 and 11th overall in deep ball rate. That's like I said, he's gonna chunk it deep. I don't know if you. I think you'll be close to 20% actually. He's at 21%. I do think you'll be around 20%. Quinn was right around like 12.4%, but Quinn wasn't necessarily great at converting those situations. I think Arch will be good. His yards per attempt, if you just look at the same criteria that I just mentioned, at least 100 dropbacks, he'd have been second behind Jackson Dart in yards per attempt. Deep ball. Now that's different from Joe Burrow, because Joe Burrow, they throw the vertical shots downfield. Joe Burrow and his offense with Zach Taylor, they don't have as many easy completions, those opportunity throws we talk about. Only 11% of Joe Burrow's passes are at or behind the line of scrimmage. That's like 29th in the NFL since 2021. And Sark's offense, a great deal of those passes, like 25, quarter of them are going to be at or behind the line of scrimmage. A lot of those, easy swing passes to the running backs, the screen game that Sark loves on the outside to the wide receivers, and also to the running backs and the tight ends as well. So just a little different in the offense, but in terms of the deep ball, that definitely translates. Both of them, I mean, Joe Burrow is one of the best in the NFL at the deep ball. Since you go look at his conversion rate on deep ball, he was at over 60%, which would have put him in the top 5, number 4 in deep ball completion. Just uncanny ability to be able to connect on those vertical throws. Helps to have a good receiver, but Texas has those too. All right, this is another thing that I think from their game that's probably maybe the most valuable asset that Joe Burrow has that a lot of quarterbacks can't replicate. Under pressure, he is Joe Cool, and he's under pressure a lot because his offensive line isn't great. He is, if you go look at his passer rating under pressure and from a clean pocket passer rating is 104, and his under pressure passer rating overall is 95. So it's a 9. If I'm rounding it up to it, you're basically talking about a 10-point difference. It's a 9.8 difference. It's 104.9 and a 95.1 are the difference between his clean pocket passer rating and his pressure pocket passer rating, which is the fewest points or the least difference that I have found from a clean pocket passer rating to a pressured pocket passer rating for any quarterback in the league. And usually there's a precipitous drop. I mean, Josh Allen, who we'll talk about here in a second, 38 point difference in passer rating. Lamar Jackson, 34-point difference in passer rating. Mahomes is 38-point difference. Jalen Hurts is over a 40-point difference in passer rating from a clean pocket than a pressured pocket. But Joe Burrow, how he handles the pressure. And I think for Arch, that is a great lesson, how you handle that pressure. And I looked at Arch's clean pocket passer rating, 128.8. Pressured pocket passer rating, 93.8. So there's a 35-point difference. So it's not, it's not crazy. It's not, like I said, I just gave you the examples. That's actually pretty standard. I guess the challenge would be trying your best to be like Joe Burrow and try to make that as small of a difference as you could make it in terms of your pocket passer rating, your clean pocket passer rating, your pressured pocket passer rating. By the way, his pressured pocket passer rating, Archie's, is 9th with quarterbacks who have at least 100 dropbacks, and that would have been 6th in the Power 4. So it ain't. He's still well above a lot of his peers in that category. And speaking of like quarterbacks who handle pressure really well, one of the things that you got to throw out there is that's also a part of Joe Burrow's game, and this will help us transition to Josh Allen. The scramble drill. He was good at it in college. He's good at it now. He was 3rd in passing yards on the scramble drill, had 413 last year. I think Arch has a chance to be deadly in the scramble drill. Texas hadn't had a quarterback that's going to be as effective scrambling as Arch, which we've talked about. I've said, scrambling is easily, you can make the argument that scrambling is the best current cheat code in the NFL. In 2023, for the first time, the average scramble averaged more than the average pass in the NFL. Freaky stuff. And when you start looking at the type of athletes they have at quarterback, it makes perfect sense. And his scramble rate wasn't ridiculously high. I think his scramble rate was 3.9, right under 4% scramble rate. But if you look at how effective he was averaging almost over 14 yards per scramble. And Quinn's scramble rate was probably somewhere around there too, a little under 4%. But he was averaging, I think, like almost 7 yards per scramble for Quinn. And Quinn's not even a great elite athlete in that sense, right? He's not dynamic or explosive in that way that Arch Manning is. So I don't necessarily think that Sark is going to run him a lot with design runs. I think you'll get some of that sprinkled in, especially for big games and special occasions, situationally. I think, but his instincts will take over at times. And that's when you'll see Arch extend plays and get into the scramble drill and then potentially connect on some of the shots downfield with bigger wide receivers. And Texas really hadn't had that element because Quinn's not a scrambler. He's not a natural scrambler. And Texas didn't really get into the scramble drill. He was really good outside the pocket, though, when he did extend the play. I think you'll get more of that with Arch. That's one of the things that Joe Burrow is great at. That's what Josh Allen is elite at. Josh Allen is, to get into Josh Allen group, that's his Superman ability. There's nobody better in the scramble drill, arguably, in the league than Josh Allen. He's right up there. It's him, Lamar Jackson, probably right there. Patrick Mahomes. I mean, he's right there in that category. I'll give you a couple of stats about the scramble drill, because I think that's something that will translate to Arch's game very well. Being able to see the play. Arch is really good outside the pocket. We've seen him throwing. He's really good throwing on the run, right? And now I said he's really good at scrambling. You add all those things together, it would assume he's going to be good at the scramble drill. That's my assumption. But Josh Allen in the scramble drill, he led the NFL in passing yards on the scramble drill in 2024 at 566 of them. He had the fourth slowest time to throw versus pressure. So when he was pressured, he took an average of 3.8 seconds to get rid of football. So the initial play, and I always say this, with guys like Josh Allen, you're defending 3 plays in one. I defend the initial drop back, whatever coverage we got. All right. We got coverage integrity. We got gap integrity for those first 3-4 seconds of the play. But when the play starts to break down and then the quarterback decides to extend the play, then you got to defend the scramble drill, which is as a secondary guy, I tell you, it's a whole nother route. He's running a whole nother route once the scramble drill starts, which is after his initial route is dead. And then if we defend the scramble drill well, and that's probably going to last us, 5-6 seconds chasing this dude around, all right, and chasing receivers around. And then ultimately, if he decides to tuck it and keep it, you got to defend the scramble. And depending on how freaky the athlete is, that can be a hell of a task. And Josh Allen, after you're already worn out, and then this dude decides, I'm just going to take it myself. And that can be, like I said, that can be daunting. And Josh Allen, 6th most scramble yards per game. His scramble rate, 8% scramble rate. That's 7th in the NFL. So he's not crazy with it. He uses it in bigger games. He'll scramble more when he needs to. So does Patrick Mahomes. The studies have shown that in the bigger games, the quarterbacks scramble more, which makes perfect sense. And so if you go start looking at it ultimately, I mean, that's, I think, the one thing I would love for Arch to take from his game, his scramble drill, and learn from it. Because Arch could really do that. Now, in addition to the scramble drill, which Josh Allen is really good at, one of the best at, I don't know if anybody's better at avoiding sacks. Sack avoidance is another thing that Josh Allen is elite at, that I hope Arch kind of, learns lessons from. Now, he's freaky. He's freaky in a way that a lot of quarterbacks ain't. Arch Manning's got his own little freaky tools to work with. I'll give you a couple of stats about sack avoidance for Josh Allen. 14, you go look at it. He had 14 sacks, or he was sacked 14 times, I should say, last season. On 539 dropbacks. Since 2010, Big Ben is the only quarterback with 500 plus dropbacks and fewer sacks, and fewer sacks than his 14. Big Ben had 13 that year. Big Ben lost 118 yards on those 13 sacks. Josh Allen only lost 63 on 14 sacks. He's better at taking those sacks, but he doesn't take a lot of them. And his pressure to sack ratio below 10%, 8% pressure to sack ratio. He was at 9.9% in 2023. 2021, he was at 10.3%. Patrick Mahomes is also elite in this category in terms of pressure to sack ratio. He's always hovering around 10%. He's at 10.9, 10.6, 10.9% in 23, 22, and 21. I went and looked at Arch's pressure to sack ratio because this is something that was concerning with Quinn that I brought up several times. Quinn was at 23.2% last year. Arch is at 26.9% pressure to sack ratio. It's really high. Now, one thing I think he also may have learned from Joe Burrow. Joe Burrow had this issue. I'm going to tell you, Joe Burrow was the most sacked quarterback in NFL history going into that Super Bowl. And he was the most sacked quarterback to ever play in the Super Bowl, I should say, the way they say it. And going into that Super Bowl he played in. And Joe Burrow is on the record for saying there are good sacks and bad sacks. I'm paraphrasing. He said, "Who cares about third down sacks? I'm just trying to extend the play and make a play." He said, unless it's a field goal issue and I'm looking to, keep my team in field goal range. He said, I don't give a damn about third down sacks. He said, he's all about trying to keep his team away from first and second down sacks. There is rationale to that. You can throw it. I mean, that makes sense a little bit, but ultimately for Joe Burrow, he's improved his pressure to sack ratio every year and percentage every year. He was at 21.9% when he first got to the league, which is pretty high. He was at 26%, actually 26.9%. He was right at where Archie is in 2021. And in 2022, he was at 22.9%. In 2023, he was at 19.5%. And in 2024, he's at 19.4%. He's getting better. He's figuring it out, right? A little bit more. And he's going to drop that number. Archie's got to drop that number. He's got to drop the pressure to sack percentage for him. Just like Joe Burrow's dropping it down. It's not a deal breaker by any stretch. I mean, that's just, like I said, some quarterbacks have a higher risk, kind of higher reward skill set. And I do think for Arch, you'll have that because he wants to get the football downfield. But we talked about getting rid of the football quicker, learning that from Joe Burrow. I think a lot of that translates to being able to reduce or better at sack avoidance, which will reduce your pressure to sack ratio so you can be the best in the league at it like Josh Allen is. Nobody's better in pressure to sack ratio, and that's sack avoidance. Essentially, that's the stat they translate to sack avoidance. And how about this? He had the eighth most throws in busted coverages. That's because scramble drill keeps a play alive. Coverages bust. The longer that a coverage has to maintain its structural integrity, oh man, the more holes, more gaps, more big windows start to develop in that coverage most of the time. He led the NFL in big time throw rate and in pressure to sack rate on plays where he held the ball more than 2.5 seconds. It's hard to sack him, and the longer the play goes on, the almost more effective and more lethal his skill set is. That is my hope for Arch, that when he extends the play and make the teams defend 3 plays in one. Make them defend the initial play, the initial drop back, the scramble drill, and the scramble. All right, one other thing I want to get to before we close out. And also, I think I'll say this up, bigger receivers are going to help Arch in the scramble drill. Remember how much bigger the receivers are now? Whether you're talking about Ryan Wingo, all right, being much bigger now. All right, white chocolate as they call him. He's 6'3", something like that, I think. And by the way, DeAndre Moore is really good in contested catch situations. 8 of 11 last year in contested catch situations. A lot of the time, scramble drill ends up in those contested catch situations. Jump ball, quarterback throwing it out there in a one-on-one situation. Your guy having to go make a play and beat another guy. Emmett Mosley, second most contested catches last year for a true freshman behind Jeremiah Smith. got some guys that can go get it. All right, last little nugget here. The only real connection between that I can find really between Josh Allen and between Joe Burrow is Joe Brady. Joe Brady is now the play calling offensive coordinator for the Bills, has been for the last 2 years. You also have Joe Brady. He was the pass game coordinator, I believe, and wide receivers coach for LSU when they got him from the New Orleans Saints when he was just an assistant with the New Orleans Saints. And then from then, his obviously career blew up, and he essentially was known for his modernity. He modernized that LSU offense. LSU offense was stuck in the dark ages. He came along and modernized it. RPOs, spread sets over power sets, lots of art running backs in the passing game like Sark loves, lots of pre-snap motions and lots of shifts. Just brought the modern cheat codes. And I talked about how sometimes as a player you start to like a certain system. I like systems that play a lot of man-to-man because I wanted to play man-to-man. I ended up going to Texas where they recruited me to play a ton of man-to-man coverage, press man coverage, right? It was something that I was infatuated with. And, maybe it's something about Joe Brady's offense that Arch likes because the Bengals took a lot of Joe Brady's offense. When he drafted Joe Burrow #1, I remember looking at this in an article by Sports Illustrated. When they drafted Joe Burrow, they basically took a lot of that offense because they wanted him to have an easier transition. I remember Brian Callahan, the quarterback coach, says, you're seeing teams try to incorporate a lot of more of what these quarterbacks did well in college to try to get them comfortable quickly. Coaches are much more open to finding what it is that the quarterbacks do well, getting feedback from the player, trying to fit whatever they have to maximize the skill set they have as quickly as possible. And I remember Joe Burrow said they asked him to write down his favorite plays. And just, hey, what are your favorite plays? We're just going to use your favorite plays. And a lot of the concepts they used were essentially Joe Brady specials. A lot of those things. Zach Taylor said at the time, we really helped ourselves, not just this weekend, but overall. He said we put ourselves in a really good position with this draft pick. He said, we are really excited. We used a lot of concepts that he was comfortable with to help him have a quicker start. So, I mean, they said it. And even Joe Burrow said, they use a lot of empty formation. That was one of the cheat codes that LSU brought out during the Joe Brady year was empty formation. And when you got a Justin Jefferson and a Jamar Chase and then Clyde Edwards-Helaire in the backfield, it only makes sense. And they would go empty. And remember when the Bengals went to the Super Bowl, they ran the second most empty formation in the NFL behind the Rams, who ran the most empty formation in the NFL. Both of those two teams kind of used it as a cheat code to help them, get ahead of the rest of the NFL. And then the rest of the NFL caught up to it. So I wouldn't doubt that maybe, and I've talked about Arch in empty formation. Remember, I gave you guys a number, 75% completion percentage this year in empty. You go look at it, over 11 yards per play in empty formation and over 10 yards per attempt for him in empty formation. It was one of the cheat codes that Joe Brady has utilized, even with Josh Allen. I've said it before, the most dangerous, or at least the most difficult, potentially, concept to defend offensively is empty formation with a dual threat quarterback. That's what Josh Allen presents to you. No, Joe Burrow didn't present exactly that, but Joe Burrow used to run back in college. Doesn't run as much, but he is good scrambling. But now with Josh Allen, with what Joe Brady's doing, they do it a lot and they do it well. And I think Arch can do that well too. I think that's something also that translates that he probably picked up from, or at least picking up some tricks of the trade from Josh Allen and in that Joe Brady offense. All right, there you go. That's my breakdown of why Arch may be so infatuated with Joe Burrow and Josh Allen, how it may translate to his game. Let's thank our friends over at Vonlane before we end today's program. Thank you very much to Vonlane. If you have to travel to the major Texas cities, in between the major Texas cities, Houston, Dallas, Fort Worth, San Antonio, Austin, Trust me, folks, it can be a bit of a toss up and it can be stressful, right? Do you decide to, take a plane? If you deal with the airport chaos, you got to deal with the stress of the airport. That's always a stressful experience. Maybe it's going to be flight delays. You don't want to have to worry about that, folks. My friends over at Vonlane, they offer a much more reliable and luxurious experience. And you don't want to drive that road yourself either, right? You get on the road, you lose that entire day of productivity. You also have to worry about traffic jams and road rage. You don't want to have to deal with that stress. Let our friends over at Vonlane get you there safely and get you there in comfort. You arrive at a luxury hotel terminal, no TSA lines, no long-term parking lots, just a seamless boarding experience that takes minutes, not hours. You settle into a plush leather seat, a hot towel, pillow, and blanket are at arm's reach. Your attendant offers complimentary snacks, beverages, and on select trips, a full meal. And if you need to relax, you can lean back and enjoy the ride. But if you want to stay productive, there's high-speed Wi-Fi in power at every seat. While you're unplugging or powering through, the Vonlane team will be monitoring traffic in real time, using smarter routes and efficient detours to keep your trip smooth and on schedule. Now is the perfect time to plan your fall travel. Booking is open through September, so whether you're headed to a college football game, like a lot of you will be, or a weekend getaway, or a business trip that needs to be done right, Vonlane makes the journey part of the reward. Vonlane serves Austin, Dallas, Houston, Fort Worth, San Antonio, and in the Southeast, Atlanta, Nashville, and Memphis. Visit vonlane.com. That's VONLANE.com. Use the code OTF25 to save $20 off your first ride with Vonlane. Vonlane, elevated regional bus transportation. I've taken it several times myself to Houston and Dallas to visit friends, to visit family, and on business as well. And I always have a great time on the Vonlane. It's always a luxurious traveling experience. So thank you very much to Vonlane for sponsoring this edition of Sunday School. And thank you guys out there for joining us. I appreciate you. And thanks to Matthew behind the scenes, twisting and tweaking the dials. I always appreciate his hard work. And for Matthew and our friends over at Vonlane, I'm Lifetime Longhorn Rod Babies. Until next time, hook 'em horns.